crisis in Sudan. We hear about crime. We hear about corruption. Yeah, sure, those things exist. But what do you call the last couple of elections in America, if not corruption at the highest levels? What do you call Enron? We have to have another perception of things. We hear men like Keith Richburg, who was a writer for the Washington Post, who wrote a book called Not Out of Africa. And he wrote about his experiences in Africa. And he talked about the bodies flowing down the rivers in Rwanda. And he said, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And he actually went on and ultimately is what he did. He thanked the fact that he was in America and had been brought there generations prior as a slave. In that manner, he was able to escape that consequence. So all of these things are being filtered through our psyche, and we ultimately hate Africa. We hate who we are. And we have absolutely no interest in Africa. But brothers and sisters, Africa is our future. Africa is all of our future. The fact that we don't care doesn't mean that others don't. Right here. In order to save the 40 million inhabitants of the United Kingdom from a bloody civil war, we colonial statesmen must acquire new lands to settle the surplus population, to provide new markets for the goods produced by them in the factories and the mines. The empire, as I have always said, is a bread and butter question. If you want to avoid civil war, you must become imperialist. Well, this is really picking up on what the brother apparently spoke on a couple of weeks ago or recently on the root causes of World War I and World War II. How many of you were here for that presentation? Okay, is that basically what he was saying? That World War I was fought over the friction, over the scramble for Africa, and World War II was unfinished business from World War I. Right? It's not over. It's not over. Oh, by the way, that was Cecil Rhodes, who was talking about the fact that here in the UK you have no resources. You depend on outside resources to provide jobs, and it was the driving force behind that great migration of people from the UK to points all over the globe. They don't have a problem with that. Been on a plane lately into Africa? Anybody? Mm-hmm. U.S. National Security Council Interdepartmental Group for Africa under the Carter administration in the 1970s. National Security Memorandum number 46. The nationalist liberation movement in Black Africa can act as a catalyst with far-reaching effects on the American Black community. Due weight must be given to the fact that there are 25 million, I don't know where they got that figure, it's much higher, 25 million American blacks whose roots are African and who are consciously or subconsciously sympathizing with African nationalism. I think maybe that figure is low because they're counting all those who are in denial, serious denial. To most Americans, the map of Africa is as unfamiliar as that of Antarctica. Most would not know Mali from Malawi, nor would they have any idea where Somalia is or Eritrea, much less why events there may be shaping the future of the world. Yet these places and others like them are vital to America's interests and those of the West. Richard Nixon, who we thought was drummed out of office and shamed, but who ultimately went on to become the foreign affairs wise man, soothsayer, prognosticator. He was very much the elder statesman who was still shaping American policy up to his death. The Real War was the title of this book. A little further down, again, Nixon's book. With Africa now a crucible of great power maneuver, we cannot afford to have our Africa policies hostage to the bitter memories still cherished by those who struggle for racial equality in America. We cannot let Africa become a stage on which Americans act out their psychic traumas. Now, what he really said was that blacks who had fought for civil rights in America and were beginning to awaken to the reality of what was going on in Africa, and that the way that America was treating Africa was improper and they needed to get involved. Now, he ain't said nothing. He wrote those 2 sentences, didn't say anything about blacks in America, did he? Real nebulous conversation here, but there are those that study his writings, and these become keys for how they institute their policies. Back again to that National Security Council memorandum, they did not want African Americans to link up with the brothers and sisters on the continent, on the ground. Why? You know the story of Joseph and his brother? Joseph was sold into slavery. Weren't we in the West who ended up in the West? Weren't we sold into slavery by our brethren? Other than that, you give Europeans a lot of credit. If you think that whites came into Africa and took you out of Africa, you're mistaken. They rowed onto the shores maybe 12 at a time on a rowboat. They made deals with other Africans. They did not go deep into the interior and carry away millions of our people. Ultimately, however, you and I who've been in the West, we hold a key as to what doesn't work for us or for them. More on that later. Nelson Mandela. American imperialism is all the more dangerous because it comes to Africa elaborately disguised. It masquerades as the leader of the free world. Now, granted, Nelson wrote this quite some time ago, but have things changed? Isn't America still purporting to be the leader of the free world? That's why she's over there in Iraq this minute. But I'm leading you somewhere now because somebody's interested in Africa. Somebody cares about Africa. National Review, 1992. In short, the security, let me read this headline first. Wanted a new imperialism. 1992. In short, the Security Council, the United Nations, and its agents will become the last most altruistic and positive of all the imperial powers, restoring to the word colonialism the good name it once enjoyed. In Mediterranean antiquity, no less than the 19th century. When do you think that colonialism had a good name? Ask the Indians back when Britain had their foot on the Indians back in the 17th, 18th century. Ask them if they felt like colonialism was a good thing. Ask those who were in Africa if colonialism was a good thing, that it had a good name. 1992, the European newspaper, May 14, 1992, is the time right for new imperialism. The second time around, Europe might stay a little longer and do the job right. As far as I'm concerned, they never left. They never left Africa. Go to Africa today. Look at those who sit in the Supreme Court of the countries of Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Uganda, Bahamas, Jamaica, independent nations. Go to these nations and see if the brothers and sisters who were well taught professors, long-time judicial careers. They're sitting on the Supreme Court, and they're wearing powdered wigs and red petticoats from their French and British colonial masters. After 45 plus years of independence, stay a little longer and do the job right. What are they saying here? Y'all with me? Do we care?
Yes.
The Observer. This appeared in April 7, 2002, not long after Blair made a statement framing his worldview. And he was setting the stage for something. He was setting the stage for just what we're talking about. 1992 to 2002, 9/11 gave them the impetus, gave them the reasoning to come in with a vengeance and to implement what's been on the books all along. But they're still forming and trying to craft a language and still checking and prodding every now and then to see, are you conscious? Are you alert? Are you awake? And I'm going to read a couple excerpts here. Thank you. To understand the present, we must first understand the past, for the past is still with us. In the ancient world, order meant empires. Those within the empire had order, culture, and civilization. Outside it lay barbarians, chaos, and disorder. Hear that language? Barbarians, chaos, disorder. It's typical imperialist era, neo-colonial, colonial era language. 2002. This ran in the UK, in the Observer, UK publication. The challenge to the postmodern world, they used to call us the third world, which meant there must have been a first and a second world. Well, now they done moved on. They're not the modern world, they're postmodern. They're a little further on. The challenge to the postmodern world is to get used to the idea of double standards. Among ourselves, we operate on the basis of laws and open cooperative security, G7, NATO, so forth. But when dealing with more old-fashioned kind of states outside the postmodern continent of Europe, we need to revert to the rougher methods of an earlier era. Force, preemptive attack, deception, whatever is necessary to deal with those who still live in the 19th century world of every state for itself. Among ourselves, we keep the law, but when we are operating in the jungle, we must also use the laws of the jungle. In the prolonged period of peace in Europe, there has been a temptation to neglect our defenses, both physical and psychological. What defenses are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that, like we established in the beginning, that all humanity came out of Africa. And it requires a certain humility to accept that. And then to recognize that if indeed Africa represents the future, it kind of requires you to have to sit down and humble yourself and say that I came from a black man and a black woman. And that's not hard to do in a world that's been built on white superiority. That's a problem. because truth would level the playing field. But the world that we live in is built on these differences that were social Darwinist differences. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That if man evolved from a monkey, then you would have to also agree that certain men evolved higher, further, and faster than did other men. Well, guess who's at the top of that strata? And therefore, we become the jungle. We're still in the jungle. He asks, how should we deal with the pre-modern chaos? To become involved in a zone of chaos is risky. Well, I guess that's what we're looking at in Iraq, isn't it? It's risky. They knew that. The UN knew it. Kofi Annan knew it was risky, warned them, but no, they went charging up in there. If the intervention is prolonged, it may become unsustainable in public opinion. I was down there at the square yesterday outside House of Commons. I saw the protest. If the intervention is unsuccessful, it may be damaging to the government that ordered it. Blair is in some trouble, isn't it? What form should the intervention take? The most logical way to deal with chaos, and the one most employed in the past, is colonization. Can you believe that someone's writing this in 2002? Can you? The handwriting is on the wall. Who cares? But colonization is unacceptable to postmodern states. It is precisely because of the death of imperialism that we are seeing the emergence of the pre-modern world. Empire and imperialism are words that have become a form of abuse in the postmodern world. Today, there are no colonial powers willing to take on the job, though the opportunities, perhaps even the need for colonization, is as great as it ever was in the 19th century. Like the people of India and Africa and Asia needed someone to really come and save and civilize us. We needed that. What is needed then is a new kind of imperialism, one acceptable to a world of human rights and cosmopolitan values. There's some folks that's interesting. In the absence of a plan that you have, someone else's plan will unfold for you. They have a plan. What's our plan? I'm not even going to talk about a piece I pulled off the internet yesterday. China's got a plan for Africa. China's all in Africa. You know why? They need oil. They need oil. The friction that led up to World War I and World War II, it's heating up. What about those who care and those that still have that colonized mind? Well educated again to maintain and uphold these systems. Like those powdered wigs I was sharing with you. How is it that we always see the warfare and the crime going on both in Africa and in black neighborhoods, but no African nation, save maybe South Africa, can even manufacture a bullet? What is that about? It's all about a mind, brothers and sisters. Which brings me to this point. Progress. Progress. Talk about crime. Sunday Times, November 7th. High-tech cops blame Johannesburg Badlands. And they talk about how in the CBD, my brother can relate to this one, in the central business district of Johannesburg that had become a ghost town as far as people with income were concerned, and if you were fair-skinned, become a ghost town, and they put cameras in And they credit the cameras and the high-tech security with having dropped crime 80%. So the article talks all about that, and then it gets to the last paragraph, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It says, one day, this is one of the camera operators, it says, one day we looked out and saw prostitutes wandering the streets again. It had been far too violent and dangerous for those girls before. Now they felt safe. It was the first sign of our success. Isn't that a shame? That the sisters are out defiling themselves. And it's a sign, it's looked at as a sign of success. How do we define these things? If the paper tomorrow comes out, if a new hospital is built around the corner, brand new high-tech hospital, 500 new beds, the local papers would say what? That's progress. We're moving forward. We're advancing. Things are getting better. Brothers and sisters, I maintain that that's regress. Because that to me means that there are more people that they expect to be sick and dying that are going to need to be laid up in those beds. Power to define. All about perception. All about how you orient things and how your mind is oriented. I say that the world is going in the wrong direction. We would have to declare that as regress. The day that a hospital is torn down, that's when we'll say it's progress. Brings me to this point, redemption. See, I'm not just up here talking. I'm part of a community that has done some things. Talking is fine. Brothers and sisters, we've been talking for centuries. Those of us that know we're in a situation, and I just talked about those that don't even know we're in a situation, but those who know we're in a situation, we're still in this trap of just talking about what we need to do and where we are. Is the European American model and the way that they define things and what works for them, and I have to question that. I don't think it works for them either. Because we're talking about a society that has polluted their own air, polluted their own water, polluted their own food, killed up the life that is needed to sustain them on the earth, and then has placed people way down the line in terms of values. You can have a homeless person, but you'll park your brand new ride in a garage. Something is wrong with those value systems, with that type of economy. We've gone in the wrong direction. Is that what we want to replicate as African people? I hope not. I think not. Seems like we need a new orientation. Is the European American model applicable for Africa? Do we want to change it? Newsweek. Soul search. Soul search. Is there room for God in a secular Europe? I think there's a reason he's holding his head. He got his head. Because you got to know, if you take God out of the equation, and I'm talking to by nature a spiritual people here. If you take God out of the equation, what do you think is going to reign in its place? Just one little quote there. European man has convinced himself that in order to be modern and free, he must be radically secular. Radically secular. Take God completely out of the equation. Brothers and sisters, we maintain that Europe and America are spiritually bankrupt. Yes, they got the wealth. Yes, they've got the military might. Yes, they're running things. At least it looks like that right now. But spiritually, it's not there. And if you know the history of the rise and falls of nations, civilizations, peoples, cultures, if you've done your homework, you would realize that we're living in the middle of a collapse, of an implosion of what looks like the greatest civilization on the planet right now. And if you're not careful and if you don't make a move, you will find yourself in the midst of that implosion when you should have gotten your hat and made a move. Where to? Africa. Africa. With all of the problems Africa's had, with all of the raping and pillaging and snatching of the resources, they still ain't scratched the surface, comparatively. They taught us that Africa was overpopulated, didn't they? Pick up an almanac, brothers and sisters. Pick up an almanac, look at the statistics. Botswana, 3.7 people per square mile. The UK, I think it's like 800 something. The Netherlands, over 1,000 per square mile. Malta, 2,500 per square mile. Who's overpopulated? Nigeria. Nigeria got to be. 1 out of every 5 Africans is a Nigerian. You know Nigeria's got to be too crowded. Lagos, maybe. Lagos, definitely. I got a few. Got a couple. $250 some per square mile in Nigeria. Our position that we need a new beginning. That just like you learned playing little blocks when you were a child, you used your little erector set, your little Lego set. And if you built on a shaky foundation, if your foundation wasn't secure, at some point it became reasonable to you as a child, I got to start all over again. Brothers and sisters, this is time for a new beginning. It's a new beginning. It's the end. Biblically, we are living in the latter days, and I don't want to scare nobody with talking about the Bible. I've said in the beginning, it's not a white man's book. The concept of the last days has nothing to do with the end of the entire earth. It is the end of a dominion that is being referred to. It was the end in the days of Noah. It was the end in the beginning, actually, because it said in the beginning that the world was void and without form, right? Wrong. It said in the beginning the world was in chaos and confusion. The Hebrew would give you that more accurate rendering. Chaos and confusion is not the idea of emptiness. Chaos and confusion is what is out here in these streets. We are back again at a new beginning. And in that new beginning, some of us are being called out. There has never been in world history that when those civilizations that had reached great peaks, as they were declining and on their way on their last waning days and last dying, gasping breaths, there's never been an exception to the rule that there was a small number of those who would leave that land and migrate to a new one that would be the one to rise to take its place. I can say to you that it is Africa's day. It is early yet in the day, but don't you wait for the twilight. Democrats and Republicans, it saddened me to look and see P. Diddy pushing the election so hard so hard that he had t-shirts that made, and anybody here can vouch for this, did you see it too? What did the t-shirt say? It said, vote or what?
Die.
Now, do you think P. Diddy was saying go out and vote for Bush? Or just exercise your vote? I mean, do you think he was a Bush man? Do you think Kerry really could have helped something? So now that most blacks, being that that's probably the way that they went, polls suggest that and always have for the last several decades, that they voted Democrat. So now that they lost, what should we do if you're African and American? Just go die, right? That's the option that was given. That was the message that was being sent. Vote or die. That's what it's come to in 2004. Y'all laughing, but what choice do you have? Laborers or the Tories? Do you see a real choice? Do you think that do you think if one of you sit in 10 Downing Street that is fixing to change? We're talking about systemic degradation and decadence. We're talking about something that is terminal and cannot be fixed. At that point, I want to show you something. I have a videotape for you. I want you to see the works of those who voted with their feet. We voted with our feet and left the West. We had given America and the West 400 plus years to do the right thing. Either they could not or they would not do the right thing. Either way, brothers and sisters, that left us with no choice. We had to do it for ourselves. What you're going to see is the culmination of what men like Marcus Garvey saw, what they envisioned. Those greats, what the Bob Marley saw. This is a modern day Exodus. And after 37 years, you're going to see little synopsis, because it's kind of hard to convey to you what we've been able to accomplish in 37 years, but this video makes an effort to do that in about 20. Y'all with me? Yeah. Following that, I'll make a few closing comments, and then I'll open the floor to questions.
Those words, born out of a desperate determination for justice and equality, had even deeper historic and prophetic implications, and the ramifications ramifications of that simple, bold statement would reverberate across continents as well as centuries.
Carter Benamy was a bus driver in Chicago when in 1966 he had a vision. He was a member of the lost tribes of Israel who ended up in America as part of the slave trade.
In 1966, Benamy received a vision from the angel Gabriel that it was time for the descendants of the biblical Israelites, now known as Black Americans, to return to the Promised Land and establish the Kingdom of God, a society that would have at its core universal principles of truth that will be an example to all men. In 1967, he led an exodus of over 300 souls back to Africa, the largest repatriation of African Americans in history. But the movement was far larger than race or politics. It was spiritual, and the spiritual implications did not go unnoticed.
We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I look over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the Lord.
What was the nature of your revelation that caused you to want to return to Israel?
This was not a back to Africa movement. It was a back to God movement. The difference in our return to the Promised Land and those that preceded us is that ours also coincided with the return unto God.
The first repatriates to the Holy Land were received as new immigrants in 1969.
I had 5 children, and we had to, they took us to a secluded part of the airport and posted and had a seatbelt and let's get Seattle minutes there while we were making arrangements for us to be accepted under the law of return. And so we spent the night there, and people in the airport were bringing us sandwiches and drinks and bottles for the baby, and all people in the airport were crying and they were saying, the people would come home, the people would come home. And
These are white Israelis. So wait. White Israelis recognize that you were the people.
But by 1971, the African Hebrew Israelites saw their status revoked. From this point, their leaders' resolve and their faith in Him would be tested.
1969, when we first arrived here, the law of return simply said you had to believe that you were a Jew in your heart and worship and keep the laws of the God of Israel in the state. We met the total criteria from December of 1969, but by March of 1970, the law was changed to read that you had to be born of a Jewish mother or convert to Judaism according to halakha, a European form of Judaism. They tried to factor us out of it because now the door was open because we came basing it on biblical truth and not traditions of man.
Without any legal protection, the African Hebrews endured nearly endless attempts at deportation and banishment.
Nearly 1,000 white-robed members of the Black Hebrew sect engaged in a tense standoff with Israeli authorities. The Black Hebrews wanted to march from their Negev desert compound some 75 miles north to Jerusalem. The planned protest was in response to the Israeli government's arrest of 46 cult members last week and targeting them for deportation.
They are now in jail, and we should order mission official in order deportation, and everybody would be expelled from the country.
I have no intention of making a life, so to speak, here in America. I've set my sights and my future development in Israel, and I fully intend to stick with that plan.
We are committed to show the world that not only are we descendants of the biblical Israelites, but we are prepared to face the suffering that goes along with that. We are there forever. We will never leave that land.
He makes that statement from jail.
Shut out from virtually every facet of Israeli society, they were forced to look inward, mining their resourcefulness for solutions that would prove innovative, not just for themselves, but ultimately the world.
Every vision requires a visionary. And he had to convince us that it was in our best interest to learn how to share. And guess what? There's not one homeless person in the world. Nobody lives out in the street. There's not one hungry person in the morning because there's no hunger. We've eradicated, he didn't stop there, but we've eradicated homelessness and hunger. And so when you begin to see the social as well as the spiritual benefits, we've got a model that we can bring back to show what African Americans can do outside of it.
Despite almost relentless pressure, Bename's conviction was unwavering, and by 1990, many legal barriers were dropped. Community became renowned as an oasis of social harmony, free of crime, drug abuse, and immorality. They were regarded as an island of sanity by the Israeli media, as well as the Village of Peace, and the U.S. Congress dubbed them the miracle in the desert. But the miracle is real. In their 34 years in the Holy Land, the achievements of the African Hebrew Israelites have become nearly legendary. According to a study conducted on community members by medical researchers from Meharry Medical College and Vanderbilt University, the Hebrews have virtually eradicated obesity, cancer, heart disease, and stroke, diseases that continue to decimate the Western world in alarming numbers. The community is completely vegan and is world-renowned for their unique gourmet cuisine that is free of animal products and preservatives. They own 13 health food outlets, including the award-winning sole vegetarian restaurants in Israel, the U.S., Caribbean, and West Africa. Organic farming in Israel provides up to 60% of their fruits and vegetables, along with 2 tofu manufacturing plants in Israel and Ghana, West Africa, that provide them with their own soy-based products. Bename's vision for a just society wasn't limited to the community in Israel, however. Their Hebrew's record for African development has caused Bename to be heralded as one of the 50 most influential African leaders of the last century. Hebrews have extensive development projects in Africa, including holistic health clinics and restaurants in Ghana. Construction of a fully modern replica of the Village of Peace nears completion in Benin, West Africa. The Benin development will feature organic farms and offer technical training to African students. The turn in public opinion has been complete. On August 28, 2003, the conviction and innovation of Benin and the African Hebrew Israelites received their highest recognition to date. In a moving ceremony attended by Israeli as well as U.S. government officials, community members were finally awarded permanent residence status by the State of Israel.
Afro-Asiatic language. And even though many of us grew up being told by the missionaries and the preachers to say, praise Jesus and thank you, Jesus, we still held on to hallelujah, didn't we? And hallelujah is simply a Hebraic phrase. And hallelujah is praise be unto, and Yah is the name of the God of Israel. It was what we considered to be a Hebrewism that we maintained throughout the generations. Well, first of all, Benin was not a bus driver in Chicago. You know how they get these reports and it just takes on a life of its own. Benin was a metallurgist. He worked at a foundry in Chicago. Prince Gabriel, who was his right hand, still is his right hand, and serves as the chief of staff. Prince Gabriel was the bus driver, as a couple other brothers were. But we made a move in '67 following that vision to leave and to go into Liberia, West Africa, to brave and endure malaria, rainfall, snakes, poisonous snakes, driver ants, the ignorance of not knowing that food didn't grow on the shelves of the local store. And after 2.5 years, these brothers and sisters paid that price and overcame in the sense that they learned to love themselves and then were able to express that love for others. Because you can't, like I said earlier, you can't possibly care about somebody unless you got an interest in them. And if you don't love yourself, you can't possibly reflect that onto someone else. But 37 years, we've had no cases of diabetes, cancer, no deaths from cancers, no kidney failure, one stroke. We've had a team of doctors come and do a study that showed that we were off the charts low relative to blood pressure and cholesterol levels. We have no locks on our doors in our community. I'm talking about 3,000 Africans from America, the Caribbean, St. Croix, Ghana, Liberia, Zaire, or former Zaire, DRC, UK, Bermuda. That didn't just fall out of the sky. There's a formula that we're able to say, when you do this, this is the result you get. Now, it's on you to then follow the formula. But if you tamper with the formula, now H2O is water anywhere in the world. But if you want to add a little XYZ at the end, it might still look like water, might go down like water, taste like water, but it's not water. Be careful, it might hurt you. It's not a threat, it's just plain simple truth. We see Dimona as a spiritual center. The spiritual center for these days, for this day and time. We're not advocating that everybody up and leave and go to Israel, or even to up and go to Africa. Because we will say it jokingly, but we really mean it. If everybody of African descent ups today and goes back to Africa, guess what? We're going to have to find somewhere else to go. Because a plane ride don't change you. And if you bring that mind that you acquired in the West, you will just infect what has been preserved and is being laid out for the future. So there's got to be some mechanisms in place to not allow that to happen. We don't want there to be a mass awakening. God forbid. Because it's a process. When you're laying the foundation for a house, it's a certain group of brothers that get called in. And yes, it's the brothers, because sisters, would y'all want to be out there in the cold and the rain and the sun beating on you all day? No, we'll call y'all in when it's time to lay the electrical wires and the interior decorating and the technological things. But let the brothers lay the foundation. Let them put the walls and the roofs up. And that's what we're talking about. We're building the house. Does that mean your job is less important? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We need that job as much as any other. It's just a different job. So everybody's got their portion. In these days, Dimona has become that spiritual center from which goes forth a formula. So with that, I will open up the floor to any questions that you might have or comments that you might have. And it's just dawning on me where I know my sister from up there. You're a long way from St. Louis, aren't you? Is that my sister? I guess not. Obviously not. I would never. You look identical. My sister next to the brother in the church. Yes. You look just like a sister I know in St. Louis. I have to introduce y'all. You have a sister in St. Louis. So, if there are any comments or questions at this time, feel free. Brother Healy? Or you just, oh. I guess everybody's real clear and everybody's ready to go. Brother Ahmad?
Yes, greetings.
Greetings, good to see you.
There has been a word song that has been highlighted years ago, repatriation. There is a lot of skilled individual here in the Western Hemisphere,
right,
that has been educated with a bountiful of skills. Here is a place now in the East. It's a vast area, it's a continent, that is crying out for the skills that are here, sitting down, suffering. For instance, places like this now, people with high skills are still struggling to make ends meet because we are in a strange land. Mm-hmm. And your skill is very high, it's unique, but the acceptance of your skill is not appreciated. But here is a place now in the East, a very vast area that is calling out for the children that has been taken away from their original homes to rebuild the temple that has been broken down. And this has been repetitively being said over the years. Now, I'm a carpenter by trade. There's a lot of other skills around. And I'm finding it very, very difficult. You know, I take a lot of pride in my work, yeah? I'm not a budger. I'm very neat in my work because the Father said, play your instrument skillfully. So I have developed myself to be a skillful tradesman. This other individual who has developed themselves through the universities of these Western Hemisphere and has more or less injecting all of their effort back into this big tank, you know. But what I'm trying to say, for me personally now, I'm desperately want to say get up and get out of this place so that I could more or less expose my skill more beneficial. Say people who hasn't got nowhere to live, you know, I want to do something that I could say, someone would say, thank you. I appreciate that. But I've been working in this trade for over 25 years. And right now at this point of my life, you know, there's nothing to show for it. As to say, what have we done with ourselves over here in places like this? We are being taken away. It's like these lectures is like an awakening, you know. But it becomes like the days of Sodom, that the system has too much, you know, things to make us comfortable. We don't want to leave. Distractions. Yeah, we don't want to leave because it's too comfortable. We could just press a button, the toilet is flush. We could just press a button, the curtain is closed. We don't have to do anything. So we become very complacent. And then we become like pillars of salt. We cannot move from where we are. You know, we have submitted ourselves to this engine that is training us from our ancestors. But here is Africa crying out for the children to return back to their homeland so that we can rebuild what is ours. But what happened, we're just draining it out down into the drain. But here I am now, I'm saying I want to make a move. Right. But His Majesty said individualism.
That's the word I just wrote down.
Yes. You know, individualism. And it's a very difficult thing for the brethren here in this hemisphere to look each other in the eye, to say, yes, my beloved, let's do something together. A lot of us is afraid to come together, so we become very individualism. And individualism has no strength. We need these collective things, an individual decision. Let's get together like a football team and score some goals. But I need to get out of here, but I can't seem to do it by myself.
And you never will by yourself, right?
That's right.
You would not even have the time to change your diet. Yeah. If you come to a consciousness, and either your search for spirituality or just for doing what is right will lead you to know that I got to change my diet. I can't eat a thick steak no more. I can't eat a thick, juicy steak. Steaks don't have juice. That's blood, pus, urine, and mucus that's on the plate. It's harmful to us. To learn about diet, to then to start to shop for the food that you need, and you can't put it on the shelf in a can and get it out the freezer and nuke it, you know, in the microwave anymore. That takes time. After a couple of weeks of you doing that, and you got to work that job and commute back and forth, a couple of weeks later you're back at McDonald's because it's convenient. And we're just talking about changing your diet, much less trying to figure a way to get to Africa. So as individuals, you're absolutely right. We'll never, ever be able to get out of this mess we're in. We have to be part of an organization that has external deliverance as its objective. There are lots of organizations. There are organizations that have lots of different strategies and what they feel, and there are those that still talk about registering and voting and going and getting an education and getting you some money. We're not talking about any of those. We understand the role of education, we understand the role of economics, we understand the role of politics. But if spirituality, then we said this is a back to God movement. And if we put that spirituality out front, that spirituality will govern our economics, our education, and so forth. So this is an organization that voted again with our feet. And after 37 years, we're saying this, not just what we're thinking about and here's what we're planning to do and want to do. This is what we are doing. Now, we need carpenters, obviously. I do a little carpentry myself. Love it. I love the smell of the wood. But what we're doing in Benin is just one step to form a training center that all over Africa people will come and learn this formula. We will have to replicate that everywhere. And more, eyes are opening, that awakening process is happening. We took on what we call the burdens of freedom. You're going to have to, in your life, carry a burden one way or another. You'll either carry the burdens of slavery or you'll carry the burdens of freedom. We stepped out on our own and we had to develop our own healthcare system. Why? Because in the beginning, Israel did not allow us status and allow us to take our sick babies or have our babies in their hospitals. But it worked ultimately to our advantage. Why? Because in securing that God mind again, knowing that there was a certain way we needed to do it, we developed a whole system of healthcare based on prevention. Yeah, okay, that's a great mind that goes into the institutions and learns how to, we see it on the TV, the ER, and they're cutting this and they're patching things back there. That's a great mind that knows how to do that. But I think it's a greater mind that can teach me how to stay out of those kind of situations and stay out from having to get high blood pressure and needing a quadruple bypass and those kind of things and sending up some little tubes up my vessels. Then, that's just, we talking about food. Health. What about education? We couldn't go to their schools. You thought we were just going to let our children just run wild? No, we educated our children. And our educational system didn't focus on competitiveness and crabs in the basket or pursuing a career for the sake of some money. It was how we going to help our people. And when our children get to a certain age, they don't just run off and get a job and go leave. They then are graduated or dedicated, as we prefer to say. They are dedicated to the service of the community. And they got to come back and roll their sleeves up and show their gratitude. So all that is part of what we have assumed and taken on as part of the burdens of freedom. Brothers and sisters, I done read the newspapers here. I know about the drive-by shootings. I know about the little girls. I know about the year-and-a-half-old baby that got shot. I know about what's her name, Danielle? I know about Danielle. I know about the sister who was sitting in the police administration over the racism department, and I know why she quit. Why did she quit? Why did she quit? For racism. She's supposed to be in the police force to deal with racism, and she quit crying racism. Like the brother said, we are trying to make this fit, but it doesn't fit for us. And it doesn't make sense to keep trying to make something fit where it don't fit. It's like being on a treadmill. You running, and they keep telling you, just a little further, just a little further. Or if you've been on the wrong, if you lost somewhere, and you're on a one-way road, can you get where you need to go, and you didn't met a dead end? Absolutely. You got to turn around, brothers and sisters, come back and find out where you made the wrong turn. That's just common sense. And that's all we're saying. This is a tried and proven formula. If you're interested in seeing where you bringing a brick to the equation, where that brick fits, I don't know. Where it fits, you would have a better idea. But you got to come and look at the blueprint and come and look at what's been built. You would say, oh, yeah, I can do this. I'll fit in here. Well, I like doing this. And watch what unfolds. You have all of you have an open invitation to come and see what we've accomplished in Israel, to see what we've done in Ghana, to see what we're doing in Benin, to see what we're doing in South Africa. We have a delegation of 8 or 9 people right now in South Africa that are moving all over, teaching these basics. We've had several South African brothers and sisters to come up and live for 3-6 months at a time in Israel. to learn preventive medicine, to learn the vegan diet, to learn colonic irrigation, to learn massage therapy, to learn herbal healing, to learn all manner of things, to learn the lifestyle that would allow us to have no locks on our doors. Did y'all hear me? No locks on our doors in 2004. And black on black crime decimates our communities wherever you find us. It must be something we done stumbled upon. And all we're saying is that we're not trying to hide it. We're trying to say, hey, here it is. Here it is. It's yours. We paid a price for it, but it's for you. It's for you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Brother Ahmad. Sister Ahmadiel. In the last year. Less than a year. Less than a year. Because it was last year in June, July that we received our permanent residency. Permanent residency. And that was really not too long after that. But truly, we understand the role that everybody had to play in getting us where we are to this day. You know, we're really happy. And you're right, this is not for everyone, and we're not trying to make this for everyone. And I usually preface my remarks by saying, at some point, I would say to you that we're not trying to convince you or convert you. And then you may realize that in the whole presentation, I didn't even use the word religion. See, this is not about religion. Not about religion at all. It's about a lifestyle. It's about a 24/7 relationship. It's about spirituality. It's about righteousness. So that's entirely different concepts from religiosity. Religion really has divided the human family. And time up for the division. It's time for us to come together. And if we can't come together on truth, you know, it's just basic truth we're talking about. So as we continue to go back in search for where we made that wrong turn, we'll find out that we didn't arrive in the West as Christians. We didn't arrive there as Muslims. We didn't arrive, we weren't Christians when we were born physically. So as we go back, we end up and say, wait a minute, we were just sons and daughters of the Creator. And that's what we have in common. And hopefully we'll be able to transcend all the differences. But on the note of the new Black Panther Party, I know Brother Huey, I know the chairman that was just here, known well from his days at Howard University. And we understand the role of the Black Panther. In fact, me personally, had it not been that I came a little bit later to consciousness, and the Panthers weren't so much on the scene, I think that was a direction that I was going to go in. I was a fighter. I wanted to fight. And I came along in there and they started telling us that it was time to go get a job, get some money, become a lawyer. And that's what I started running after. I actually worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for a Democrat and a Republican at one time. And I realized while working there, I said, no, this ain't what I need to be doing. I became a spiritual warrior because I heard the calling. And that just was, that I had to answer my own calling. We're true to our own callings. But I'll never forget, I like to always talk about the movie Malcolm by Spike Lee. And I never forget the scene when Malcolm was in the police captain's office and he told the captain, said, look out the window. And when he looked out the window, there was this line of the fruit lined up. And all the brothers at one time, their heads snapped and looked at him up in that office. And in the theater that I watched the movie in, the whole theater erupted in applause. But that taught me something. It taught me that African people, in our nature, we like discipline and order and authority. But Garvey made the statement that for every 100 orders that he gave, only 2, not 92, not 72, 52, but 2, only 2 were carried out. And he went on to say that the African had to be removed from those lands and put in a land that was entirely his own and subjected to his own racial authority. And now you know what we've been taught on MTV. Don't nobody tell me what to do. I do my own thing, And that's the messages our children are bombarded with. But in our nature, we still like discipline. And discipline has its place. We got our own Ministry of Security. In fact, all the brothers have to post security. One night a week. So, any other comments or questions? My brother.
I just like to ask your opinion. The fact that we're linked to our ancestors, and the fact that we're looking at healing. How is your opinion about being killed? The Bible also says an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Now, I just want to hear your opinion on how do you remedy our healing that was said that we have this morning and the murder of our ancestors.
Excellent question. Well, one thing we can't do is be reactionary about it. We can't go jump out and grab some weapons or try to outdo the master of destruction. As I said earlier, Africans don't manufacture a bullet. That's not our fight. Our strength is our spirituality. Spirituality brings God into the equation. Either we are who we say we are, or we just fake it. There's no way that we could have stayed in that land for 35 years up against the Mossad, the FBI. I mentioned earlier when Prince Ahmadiel was saying that we're not leaving that land, he made that comment in the absolute, and he was in a jail cell in Washington, D.C. They arrested our leadership in the States as well. At the same time, they surrounded our community in Israel. Brother, we had to have God with us. And that's our fight. That's our great strength. That's our weapon. No weapon formed shall prosper. Yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil. Go in, take that land, fear not, be not discouraged. That does not mean that there's some things that are frightening on the path and discouraging, because that's why the Creator warned us. So our position is relative to that is it, yes, but they're going to pay. In fact, they're paying now. They built the world on those types of injustices and evils, and now it's coming back to haunt them. Look at their society, which is, our position is that we shouldn't be trying to argue for a bigger share of this rotten pie. Man, please, we want out. We'll bake our own pie. You know, so we'll leave them here to have what they have sown. And it's not pretty. When I mentioned earlier about knowing that some of you had been to the brother's lecture on the First and Second World Wars and why those wars were fought, there's a third one coming. It's already happening. It's already begun because everything begins spiritually. Prophetically, we know that Europe had to come together. That prophecy is fulfilled in our lifetime. The European Economic Community, the European Union, the Euro established. The euro surpassing the dollar. I took $50 to the place yesterday and only got 20 pounds for it. The dollar's finished. Okay? But don't you know we're talking about the same things that precipitated World War I and II. We're talking about trade wars. We're talking about an economic bloc. Europe and America, at some point, the friction will heat up just like it did in previous, and they will go at each other. Zechariah talked about a nuclear holocaust on the earth. Revelation talked about the destruction of Babylon. It says, come out of her, that ye be not partakers of her plagues. They got the plagues are upon them for what they sowed. The commandment in this age is to come out. And in doing so, remember now, it said that, how did it read? It said that the merchants of the earth, right, would be standing afar off and doing what? Weeping and wailing. Why? Because there was no one to buy their merchandise anymore. America doesn't produce a thing anymore. Everything comes from Taiwan, China, UK, not UK, Germany, and then not even so much there anymore. But on that one point, it lets us know that it is not the end of the entire world. Because if the prophets saw some people weeping and wailing when Babylon was burning, you got to know that, hey, wait a minute, that's not the end of everything. It's just the end of a system. Second part?
I'm just saying, if the Europeans crash right this moment.
If they were what?
Crash was fall at this moment. Their system was disintegrated at this moment, yeah? I see the Chinese in place to take over.
Yes.
Yeah? Now, bearing in mind that people globally, most of us today still sleeping. You know, we're not mentally fit at this moment.
True.
To control our own destiny.
True.
If the European system was to crash at this moment, yeah? How do we begin to heal ourselves, put ourselves in a position of leadership again?
All beginnings are small. All beginnings are of necessity. They're hard and they're small. Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, whom many called Jesus. Of course, we know that there was no letter J 2,000 years ago, so the name could not have possibly been Jesus. Brings me to another whole issue. But Yeshua made the statement that the kingdom of God, kingdom is simply a government structure. It's the same kingdom that Daniel referred to, said that in the days of these kings, and he was talking about the European Union, in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. Again, this is not something coming out of the sky, brothers and sisters. We're talking about thy kingdom come, thy will be done where? On earth as it is in heaven. Who put heaven up in the sky? Europeans did. From a Greco-Roman interpretation of the Bible, they stumbled up on the Bible. They got hold to some scriptures and they interpreted it and put angels with wings and heaven in the clouds, and it's all false. The brother said that the kingdom would be like a mustard seed. It would start off very tiny, seemingly insignificant. There were less than 400 people who left in 1967 and went into West Africa. Out of that 400, only 140 or so ended up leaving Liberia to go to Israel. The rest of them went back. They couldn't take it. But ain't that what happens when you join the Marines or the armed forces? Just a real quick note. This is from the New Nation last week, or a couple weeks ago, the 100 greatest icons ever. And the number one was who? Jesus. ISIS. Jesus. Brothers and sisters, yes, he was an African. But he had an African name, not a Greco-Roman name. And we're just still wrestling with folks out here about the fact that he was an African. That's a superficial something. Hair is a superficial, obvious something. Name is still fairly superficial. We haven't even begun to deal with doctrine and the message that underlies, and again, those doctrines that put heaven in the sky and hell under the ground. It's all deception, and we have to deal with those issues, but we got to at least crack that surface first.
Mm-hmm. What my common experience, because we're born with a free will and a free choice in nature, that tells me that, things are done to ourselves. We got to take care of ourselves, because the law that what we sow, we must make that.
Okay.
Yeah? So therefore, it tells me that our own destiny is in our own hands.
Okay. So
at the same time, like I said, because we're, sleeping people, we're mentally sleeping, spiritually sleeping as well. What's the process to begin the awakening of our people? I mean, I know education is one of those key.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm going to tell you, this is our formula. The formula for us began when we left. See, because you can stay in the West for the next 10, 20, 30 years talking about what we need to do and that we need to wake up and move. But ultimately, if you were to leave next week or next month or next year, that circle of folks that you have already been talking to and who already started to look to you for guidance, you will ultimately have more influence on that circle when you make that move than if you stayed here for 50 years. You got to make the move. And prophetically, we go back to Ezekiel. When Ezekiel was talking about the dry bones in the valley, the bones didn't really start to moving and shaking, or at least the process of redemption didn't take place until they were brought into the land of Israel, as it's written. Check it out for yourself. 36, 37 chapters of Ezekiel. The process began when we moved, because we then showed the Creator that we were serious about turning our back on Babylon. It ain't about letting our people go no more. We ain't got to tell Bush to let our people go or Blair to let our people go. They ain't got us like that. We sitting on the seesaw wanting to know when is he coming down, and it's predicated on when we decide to get up. And again, it takes a few to get it started. That's the process. It's not going to happen another way. If it happened another way, then somebody would say, well, it wasn't God. You follow me? Any new hands? Y'all ready to go? Y'all just tolerate me this evening? Yes.
go home and do their homework, or they'll get some help to understand how important it is for us to remember people that are sacrificed, and in order for us to, as the brother was, I was trying to understand what the brother was saying, but in terms of people coming out of that dead mental backward thinking. So, you know, as I say, it's important to remember men like that.
Appreciate that. And an interesting point that I learned about Nat Turner. Nat Turner was trying to get to a certain town in Virginia. Anybody know what the name of that town was? The name of the town was Jerusalem. Now, consider someone who was raised on a plantation, had probably never ventured more than 20 or 30 miles in a radius from where he was. But he has in his consciousness, via the oral tradition that our ancestors were keeping alive, because remember, to read, write, preach, or teach, that was punishable by death. And as an Israelite, because we say that a significant number of the Africans that ended up in the Western Hemisphere were Israelites, they were keeping alive that remembrance via songs, and they were singing about Jericho, Jerusalem, Canaan's land. They weren't singing about Mali, Songhai, Timbuktu. They were singing about the River Jordan, not the River Niger or the River Gambia. So if this is what formed and framed his consciousness, he's trying to get through these little hick towns, and he's gathered up other enslaved Africans along the way, but his objective ultimately was Jerusalem. Do you think that maybe he may have known or thought he was getting back to the Jerusalem that was really home for him? Just possible. I think so. I think that promised land that Dr. King was talking about, everyone wants to talk about the dreamer. No one wants to talk about the king who, in his latter days, shared with Harry Belafonte a new vision he had. Troubling vision. He told Harry Belafonte, he said, sometimes I can't help but think we're integrating into a burning house. Now, if you're a fireman, you know at some point, if the fire is not quenched, you have to abandon the house. That's what I, again, keep saying. That's what time it is. I missed this. I forgot to share this with you. Again, this is a UK publication. What are they saying? Now for Africa. They ain't even finished in Iraq. But now for Africa. George Bush's new mission. Africa. Since some folks do care. And this is how they send these little messages. Also, kind of answering that question that my brother had about the, how would you say, I would say the reparations or the redress, the satisfaction of what we need to feel. This is from a U.S. News and World Report, The Ancient World. It's a piece here called Dangerous Liaisons. And it's talking about early Greek and Roman sexual practices. And it's talking about pederasty, which sent me to the dictionary. Pederasty. Pederasty is when men have relations with young boys. Okay? It's not just homosexuality, it's specifically men and young adolescent boys. And this was common in Greek life. It says the founding fathers of modern civilization certainly enjoyed sexual variety and were free. That's that word, freedom. Freedom. To take it when and where they pleased. And what pleased them most were ardent, passionate love affairs with beautiful adolescent boys. Then it goes on, and it says, here's one. It says, it's a sad fact, writes reviewer Ben Rogers, perhaps, but there have never been greater philosophers than Socrates or Plato, greater dramatists than Aeschylus, I'm not saying that right, or Sophocles. Yet many of these great men wrote as if it were perfectly natural to desire handsome boys. And at the end of the article it says, the fact remains that Greek boys of a certain class grew up to become the very men who shaped our Western intellectual heritage. If these leading lights of classical civilization had been sexually abused as children, it is almost certain that after reaching adulthood, they in turn did the same thing to other youngsters. How might that be reflected in the political and social ideas they have passed on to us? We need to know. There's a scripture that reads, I think it's in Jeremiah, it says, they will come to us from the ends of the earth and they will say, our fathers have inherited lies and things which do not profit. See, white superiority was a lie. Black inferiority was a lie. The truth brings it back to a level playing field. So they've inherited a world with a fat guy coming down the chimney bringing some gifts. They inherited a world where the calendar, the new year, begins in the middle of winter. Come on now, don't you know spring is the obvious new beginning and when you would start? Well, that's how it is in most cultures, most pre-Western cultures. So I could go on and on with those kind of examples in terms of what has been inherited as supposedly better, more progressive, more advanced, but in reality is far, far behind. And they have progressed and advanced themselves to the brink of their own extinction. And it's not for us to try to catch up with them. Come on now, internet access, that's a great tool. Television, it's a great tool. We use those tools. But technology is not our savior. Only half the people on the planet Earth have ever made a phone call. Are we going to say that we have to all be wired to the internet to get salvation? Absolutely not. We got to be wiser than that. Let them fools go straight over the edge. And when they do, we'll be here picking up the pieces, putting it back together the way it needs to be. My brother? Trying to get away with it. Go ahead, my brother, I'm sorry.
Yeah. What's been the response of African governments to your movement?
Response from what?
Of African governments to your movement.
Oh.
The general response.
If you went into a country after Savior's Day in 1994 in Ghana, and the president of the country talked about how the water in the upcountry was not the equivalent of the water in the toilets of Accra, and you brought a $250,000 drilling rig, shipped it from Florida to Ghana, went through all of the red tape and having to dash people at the docks to get the thing in the country, and you trained a couple brothers in Florida to operate the equipment, that when you started drilling, you broke bits and had to ship new bits in from Florida, airship them in so that we wouldn't have 3-4 months waiting on them. If you had a team of nutritionists that came to make sure that the brothers that were working on this project, that they were well fed so that when they got bit by those malaria-carrying mosquitoes that they could fight it off. And in the course of a rice mill where the Chinese machines from the 50s and 60s were breaking down and were breaking the rice that the people would grow, and they couldn't get the top CD, that's the local monetary unit. They couldn't get top dollar for their work. We brought in a state-of-the-art rice mill machine, and the people brought their rice, milled the rice. We keep a bag or two. They happy, we're happy. Later on, we invested the proceeds and brought a dryer, so they don't have to come and spread it out and then watch for the rain and then come run and grab it up. Now they can put it through the dryer and keep on going. So they're happy. And I can go on. These are what we call redemptive enterprises. It is not our objective to come into Africa and sell the people cigarettes, to sell the people Coca-Cola, just because we can. We're supposed to know what Coca-Cola did to the people. We're supposed to know what cigarettes did to the people, and we're not supposed to come back and allow that to come from we're supposed to teach them and show them by our example. One other thing that we did in Ghana, we opened up a soy factory recently, in the last year and a half. Now, we know that there was no great market there that we could come in and exploit to sell people tofu and soy milk and soy ice cream like we've been eating in Israel for the last 25 years or so. But we know that that is the direction that the diets need to go. They cannot continue to eat meat. As the economies of various societies in Africa and other nations grow, they will have more disposable income. If we don't reach them now, they will spend more of it on cigarettes, more of it on hard liquor, more of it on meat. And we know the results of that. Yes, sir.
Can I just ask you, you said
Hold on, Debbie, I got something for you. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, you said there's a process in place where you're teaching our people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got it the wrong way, that it seems to me like talking about a physical sense, but is there something in place to teach our people our ancient or truthful history of self? Because, from my reference, that's one of the key of freedom of imprisonment.
Yeah.
Is there anything to teach our people our history?
Yes, but I'll answer it like this. We know that as far as ancient history goes, that there's Kemet, there's Samaria, there's Nubia. There's some evidence of the existence of Atlantis, that Atlantis was shoved up under the sea when a great cataclysmic change of the Earth's crust took place eons ago. We don't have the liberty right now to take the time to trace that as far back as that could go. We may never find that. Instead, because we are faced with our own extinction as a people, we need to be able to have a cutoff point to say, okay, I see the direction this is going. For this dispensation of time, that's sufficient for me. Let's address these critical issues that threaten our very existence. And later, once we stop that onslaught, later our historians, our theologians, our wise men, our archaeologists, those are anthropologists, we can come together and we can sort all that out. That's our argument to that. We're saying that the Bible, because there's an argument that says that the Bible is only 6,000 years old. We don't argue that. That's true. But, and as I said in the beginning, mistranslation. The Bible in the Hebrew does not start in the beginning. It reads in a beginning. Completely different understanding. Which then begins to make sense, and then you can start answering the questions as to, well, who did Adam and Eve's sons and daughters marry if it wasn't incest? No, because it wasn't just Adam and Eve. There was some other people around. It was a new creation. It was a new beginning. There was chaos and confusion, meaning there was a society there in existence. So ancient history roots us, but we've got enough to know that, people that wrote that book as a guide for us in this dispensation of time, they are reaching back out to us to speak. The prophets are speaking to us and guiding us right now, and we can use that. And in fact, I've got a little handout for you on how we interpret scriptures, certain keys to certain scriptures. How much longer do we want to go? I mean, I'll go as long as y'all want to ask questions.
Yeah, just one thing. I understood the question which the brother has asked concerning who is there to remind us of our ancient history, to teach us. But I've always got confidence that if we know ourselves you know, you yourself, you're capable of, the answers are within ourselves. You know?
Right.
Like say, for instance, being in this country for over 30 odd years, yeah? But that, due this country is concrete, we are disconnected from the earth. So we are walking on concrete. So all the connection and the statics and the minerals, they are cut off. So we are wearing shoes for 24/7. So that mystical connection, like electrical plug, you plug in, like in the ancient, from I was a boy, my experience from a youth back home, I was walking barefoot. And there was a connection with the universe that I could understand. There's a great sea, the earth, everything is there. The moon, the stars, we could look up in the heavens, and we learn things. Mystically, the Spirit of God visits you personally and speak to you and opens your, you know, your intellect, yeah? Because everything you see in books is what a man sees in himself, or what somebody sees outside in the universe. You see a tree grow, he writes it in a book. You see the sun rising from the east, and he studies that like a bird watcher. He studies it, but when I was in Africa a few months ago, and this is the first time I've gone to Africa, and as soon as I got there, it's like a page just, you know, this page here was in England, and all of a sudden it flicks up. It was no use, because what I had in me, I couldn't bring that liberty that I've been with the 30 odd years here to go to Africa. Immediately it reminded me where I'm coming from. And from there I started to grow from that remindation. And from you can tap into yourself. You will find all the answers, because each organ has a record. The heartbeat collects every thought that you have made from ever since you was a babe. Because the Creator, He has established you before you even knew yourself.
Right.
And He has programmed all of these digits in you. So it's only for you to find yourself, to tap into that part of yourself, to get the answers. Because the answers, you could be going to sleep, and He visits you to give you your answers. Any answers you need, you could get that answer. I don't have to go to Tom, Dick, and Harry. The Father said, call on me and I will show you. When Solomon was Solomon was on the throne, when David was stricken of age, so his son had to take over. And Solomon trembled. What can I do with such a great vast people? I don't know what to tell them. What if they have a problem? And they come to me, I don't know what to say. And he had to get on his knees and ask the Father, here I am, you have put me in this position. What do I do when certain things happen? And all he says, he didn't have to see them both. He asked the Father, just give me the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding. So in case of any problem, He can solve it. But all the answers is within ourselves. There's nowhere else to go. Because He said, if they say He's around the desert or in the corner, believe them not. But know that He's here with you all the time. So the answer is here. Our ancient ancestors have gone, but the word is one and the same. You know, that's what I think as an encouragement for seeking that answer. It may help. It's within. There's nowhere else to find. Yes, beloved. The tongue is wrong. Bless it.
Maybe we'll wrap it up with our brother.
I know I appear to be very unsatisfied, which I want to say, you know. But, you know, just like a tree, the strongest part of a tree is the root. And you plant the seed in the ground, and it takes the root in the ground before it can come up and bear fruit or whatever.
Right.
Because without the root, there is no tree. Right. Now, we as a people, our root is our history. Yeah. And without our history, we people don't know foundation, nothing. And without that fact, that's why every other people on planet Earth is exploiting us today. Yeah? Because we're a victim of just the European match, we're a victim of Asia, all of them, Arabs.
What would satisfy you then?
You know,
we've grown from less than 100 people to over 3,000. And you've seen, and I've told you about some successes. I've invited you to come and look. And if you want to be a part, if there's something that you want to teach or feel that needs to be taught, you've got a standing invitation.
I'd love to be a part. But like I said, you know, in this so-called Caribbean, millions of African people here that don't have a clue what's going on in the world today.
True.
How do we touch those people? How do we touch people in Australia?
We
have our people in Russia, all over the country, there are people today. So I'm saying that 3,000 is very good. Each journey begins with the first step.
What's your name, brother?
Kofi.
Brother Kofi. The reason I'm here, and some of these brothers and sisters will tell you, that for 9 months out of the year, for the last maybe 12 years, I've spent the majority of my time away from my family in Israel to do just what I'm doing right now. And there's a staff of us, brothers and sisters, who are constantly being sent to different places. Suriname, Jamaica, Bermuda, Guyana, Ghana, South Africa. And we're using the technology that is available to us, but we don't have control of the mass airwaves as of yet. But we ain't forsaken the fact that our people still need this word. That's my presence testifies to that. The harvest is great, but the laborers are truly, truly few. So we just need some more hands on this hoe.
I would like to part of that work.
My brother, these brothers would be glad to talk with you. When I leave here, which will be in a couple of days, there are a team of brothers and sisters that are based here that will continue to work with you and communicate with you on that. And I look forward to seeing you right after we finish, and also in Israel.
Is there a date of times when this program continues?
There's a regular class, regular informational class seminar in which we bring a variety of teachers to bring maybe visitors from Israel, maybe some local members of other communities even that will come and bring these classes with the purpose of consistently elevating us here in this area. You can call, there's a number here, it's coming up on the screen in a minute. Local number, London 0207 207 0772. My email is there. Our website is there. Address and phone number in Israel. My office. We will continue to, we just recently in the last month had a delegation of more than 25 or 30 musicians that came in. They performed here and went on, some of them went on to the U.S. and performed in Atlanta, Chicago, and D.C. areas. We had brought in what we call the first and the last poets. One of the founding members, David Nelson, of the Last Poets out of New York, has become a member of the Hebrew Israelites, and he has hooked up with the brothers who were doing poetry in the land in Israel, and now they call themselves collectively the first and the last poets. We are regular people like you. I love playing basketball, and because I've gotten to a certain age, I don't stop. In fact, we are very, very active. We like to have parties. We enjoy music. And we have fun when we do, except there's no smoke in the air. You won't have to worry about your sisters being hit on the wrong way. You won't have to worry about getting cut in the parking lot or shot on your way home. And we're not listening to Michael Jackson, because we know that a musician's mind is transformed via his music. You know? And we don't have to worry about them threatening to shut us down, at the next Mobo Awards, because we don't play that. And we're not homophobic. We're not scared of that. We will tell our brothers that you off. You're not thinking straight. So we're regular folks, and we want you to know that we're your people. We were disappointed when The Voice ran an article and said that we were a cult, and to denigrate Whitney Houston's visit to the Holy Land to try to get herself together, to go and dip into Jordan, that her mother had always talked about, the songs and the places that she sang about in churches as she was growing up. Yeah, we know Whitney got problems, but hey, everybody raise your hand in here who's been on something, right? Y'all with me? So let's be real. We didn't need somebody to throw them kind of stones. That was a low blow. But if you go on our website, you'll find some of our responses to those issues. But I want to thank you for your patience, your presence, because again, it does testify that you do care. But let us be mindful that we not take the same mind that we have acquired. Because remember, we're all only doing what we've been taught. So let's not take that same mind back when we go back. Let's go through another kind of transformation. So I thank you, and I leave you as I came. Shalom. Thanks to Aaron and the ACS here in South.
All right, everyone, I'd like to thank you for coming. I don't know if you heard at the beginning, but Ahmadiel, he was due to go back on Sunday, and he stayed especially to give this presentation here today. So if you give him another round of applause. Here from the African Caribbean Society. She's just going to make a few announcements. She won't keep it too long.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I just want to make you aware that we're going to have another meeting on Tuesday. It's a viewing. Is it? It's a documentary, Bang Bang in the Manor. It's going to be on Tuesday from 6 p.m. In the Manor Electric Theater. You guys can come on in. It's going to be open.
Yes,
So bring your friends as well. Just let them know at the front desk that you're here for the ACS meeting.